Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our Quran study. We start our today's Quran study, inshallah, from verse 70 of chapter 16, the bee. I seek refuge to God from Satan the rejected, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. God created you, then He terminates your lives. He lets some of you live to the oldest age, only to find out that there is a limit to the knowledge you can acquire. God is omniscient, omnipotent. Um, so this verse tells us that God is the one who has created us and who has brought us to this world for a specific purpose. And once our time in this world ends, He terminates our lives. And only God knows how long we live on this planet Earth. Not even the angels know that. So at a time when it's time for us to go, God tells the angels to receive our souls. So He is the only one that knows how long we live on this earth. He's the one that terminates our lives. And He lets some of you live to the oldest age, only to find out that there is a limit to the knowledge that they can acquire. And so the length of our life on this planet is determined by God. And as one of His signs, He says, some of us live to the oldest age to find out that there's a limit to the knowledge they can acquire. I mean, this can be explained in two ways. One, the knowledge can only be received by godly. So if God doesn't will for any knowledge to come to us, it will not come to us. Doesn't matter how much you search for it. And also the fact that once we pass certain age, it will be difficult to acquire new knowledge. That's my understanding. God is omniscient, omnipotent. God knows everything and He can do anything He wills. No partners with God. God has provided for some of you more than others. Those who are given plenty would never give their properties to their subordinates to the extent of making them partners. Would they give up God's blessings? And God made for you spouses from amongst yourself, and produced for you from your spouses children and grandchildren, and provided you with good provisions. Should they believe in falsehood and turn unappreciative of God's blessing? In this chapter, we've read about God's blessings. He has provided so many examples of His blessings to us. And in the coming verses, they continue. Praise God. Um, and in verse 71, God is explaining to us the logic of having a partner. And so what God says is that He provides some of us provisions, wealth, more than the others. And those who are given plenty of provisions and blessing by God, they will not give it to their subordinates or anybody else to make them as powerful and as wealthy as they are. You know, we will never do that. I mean, like, this is in the Quran as well. And human being by nature is stingy, right? That's one. And then the other one is that in terms of charity and all that, God has told us that you give the extra. So even if by that we would never just give away all of our wealth to a certain person to the extent that that certain person will be wealthier than us or as wealthy as us. I mean, I have not seen anyone done that, right? So God says you wouldn't do that. How do you expect God to share His kingdom with anybody else? Obviously not. So praise be to God, Lord of the universe. You know, He has everything. He has all the wealth. It's You cannot encompass his greatness. How do you expect it to share his power with anybody else? I mean, that's just out of question, right? So this is like a worldly example that God has given us for us to ponder upon and think, and just to see, to get the logic of it, and see how stupid it is to um, set up partners with God, the worldly partners, the ones that are created by God. And then God gives us example of the blessing of having a spouse and producing children and grandchildren from a spouse for us. And God is the one who's doing that, giving us provision. And how unappreciative a human being would be um, to disbelieve in God and set up partners beside Him. I mean, it's a very gross offense when you think about it. SubhanAllah, all these blessings that God has given to us, and I mean, the chance of living on this earth to be able to redeem ourselves is one blessing, and all the other things that God has provided for us to be able to have a good and comfortable life in this world. Why taking up just as a different one? Idol worship, not very intelligent. Yet they worship besides God what possesses no provisions for them in the heavens, nor on earth, nor can provide them with anything. Therefore do not cite the examples for God. God knows while you do not know. And again, the logic of it. And the idols that us human beings set up beside God, they have nothing. They cannot benefit themselves. They cannot do anything. They cannot provide us with anything. If anything, all these religious leaders that people set up as idols beside God, they ask for money. They don't provide them with anything. And they have no power whatsoever either to benefit themselves or anybody else. So that's totally a gross act. The rich believer is better than the poor believer. God cites the example of a slave who is owned and is totally powerless, compared to the one whom we blessed with good provisions, from which he gives to charity, secretly and publicly. Are they equal? Praise be to God. Most of them do not know. SubhanAllah. Um, Messenger explains this in the audios that a rich believer is better than a poor believer in a sense that the rich believer would have the means to spend from God's provision in the cause of God. In the cause of God, example would be to print out the Quran and make it available to different people, or I don't know, like the things that all the brothers and sisters are currently doing, educating themselves to be able to build platforms and means to be able to um, spread the message and make it available to many people. All the people that spend their time, they have their time and ability to spend their time and to do lots of other things, including translations and audios and all that. And scripts. Yeah, some of the brothers are doing the videos and audios, footnotes. So there's a lot that our communities are doing, and that's by God's blessing. And what God says here is just like a rich believer, or the believer that's got means and wealth to be able to use it in the cause of God, is better than a believer that is not able to, that does not have the means to do that. Obviously, God tells us that children and money are a big test in this world. So having lots of money is a big test for the believers, and those believers that despite being difficult, use their wealth and their time and their means to spread the word of God and use it in the cause of God. They're the winners, compared to the ones that don't. If I could explain it. And God cites the example of two men. One is Tom, lacks the ability to do anything, is totally dependent on his master. Whichever way he directs him, he cannot produce anything good. Is he equal to the one who rules with justice and is guided in the right path? Again, this is a comparison between someone that has received the guidance and can judge in according to God's rule, to the one that is not able to do anything on its own and it's deaf and dumb. So there is a huge difference between these two, obviously, in terms of a person that is guided and a person that is not guided, and is not able to do anything good. The life is very short. This life is very short. To God belongs the future of the heavens and the earth. As far as he's concerned, the end of the world, the hour, is a blink of an eye away, or even closer. God is omnipotent. God brought you out of your mother's bellies, knowing nothing, and he gave you the hearing, the eyesight, and the brain, that you may be appreciative. Do they not see the birds committed to fly in the atmosphere of the sky? None holds them up in the air except God. This should be sufficient proof for people who believe. Um, God says, as far as God's concerned, the end of the world or the day of judgment is blink of an eye away, or even closer. I mean, in the other dimension, time is not the same as time in this world. It's totally different. And when God gives us an allegory of the sixth day of creating the heavens and earth, like in our worldly life, it's like few billion years, right? So technically, because God is aware of everything, for God, time does not have any limitations. So God is the creator of everything. He knows everything already, right? So he already knows who's going to be in heaven, who's going to be in hell. And the day of judgment is just like a blink of an eye away for God. God is omnipotent, and he, by his mercy, informs us of all the things that will take place on that day, all the utterances, all the actions, all the events that will take place. He has informed us in his final testament very clearly and proven mathematically, by God's leave, that it will truly happen, and for us to be able to take heed and prepare ourselves for that day. So that's the huge difference between those who believe and those who do not believe. Those who believe have been informed and they've got an instruction book to prepare themselves for that day, for the big day. God brought you out of your mother's bellies. That's another sign from Lord, that God has created us from nothing really, and he brings us to this world out of our mother's bellies, knowing nothing. So a kid that is a child that is born, it has no ability whatsoever in terms of knowledge, in terms of being able to control anything really. And as they grow up, you would see that they acquire all these, they build up these abilities. And God has given us the hearing, the eyesight to be able to see, hear, and observe things and learn things, the brain that will allow us to learn things and capture the information, process the information, learn things. And he sent us messengers and books and all that with all the knowledge for us really to learn and be appreciative. Do not see the birds committed to fly in the atmosphere of the sky. That's another amazing thing that God has created for us. The birds that fly in the sky, it's amazing. And God says none holds them in the air except God. Okay, so whenever you see a bird flying, subhanallah, praise to God, Lord of the universe, that has such abilities and has given the knowledge for us to be able to build airplanes and all that. So of course the knowledge is from God, but none of them can be anywhere like God's creation. SubhanAllah. This should be sufficient proof for people who believe. And God provided for you. Where am I? And God provided for you stationary homes where you can live, and He provided for you portable homes made of hides of livestock, so you can use them when you travel and when you settle down. And from their wools, furs, and hairs, you make furnishings and luxuries for a while. SubhanAllah. We discussed all the benefits of the livestock for us. God is now telling us about their wools and furs being used to make portable homes and being able to use them for furnishings and luxuries as God's mercy for us. And God provided for you shade through things which He created, and provided for you shelters in the mountains, and provided for you garments that protect you from heat, and garments that protect when you fight in wars. He does perfect His blessings upon you, that you may submit. Again, subhanAllah, the shade that God has provided for us, in the heat of the summer, when you go to the shade, it's a blessing. And He has provided for us shelters in the mountains, and clothing that we wear to protect us from heat, protect us from cold, to protect us in war from being injured. So these are all God's blessing upon us, and it reminded me of the verse where God, I think, gave no, it was Solomon, that God gave it metal, iron, so that he can use to build clothing for war. I think so. Um, and he was able to shape the iron by his will. So he does perfect His blessing upon you, that you may submit. So these are also part of the blessings that God has given to us. If they still turn away, then your sole mission is clear delivery of the message. So you see all these blessings, everywhere you look is a blessing of God. You look at the carpet under your feet, it's a blessing from God. The threads and all that are from wool and cotton or silk or whatever you you have. That is created by God. The chair that you're sitting in, the wood is from the trees that God has created for us by His leaves through the soil and the water and the rain and all that. Everything you look around you, whatever you're using, I mean, it's God's creation, and it is His blessing that He has, created these and put them in our service to be able to use them. So if you still turn away, then your sole mission is a clear delivery of the message. So the messenger's role is just to deliver the message. They are not responsible for guiding people. The guidance only comes from God. The disbeliever, unappreciative. They fully recognize God's blessings, then deny them. The majority of them are disbelievers. So, majority of the human beings on this planet Earth, they recognize God's blessing, they see God's blessings, they recognize God's blessing, but then they deny them. God says majority of them are disbelievers, unfortunately. On the day of resurrection, the day will come when we raise from every community a witness. Then those who disbelieved will not be permitted to speak, nor will they be excused. Once those who transgressed see the retribution, it will be too late. It will not be commuted for them, nor will they be respited. So these verses are talking about the situation of the disbelievers on the day of resurrection. So God says those who disbelieve will not be able to speak. God does not allow them to speak, and He will not excuse them. There is no excuse. No excuse will be accepted on that day. Those who transgress, they see the retribution, and imagine you see the hell, and you have to run to it because you cannot tolerate God's majesty. You cannot tolerate God's power. You have to run to it. Imagine you have to run towards retribution on that day. God says He will not forgive them, and He will not commute the retribution for them. SubhanAllah, it's too late. There's so many reminders sent down to us throughout history, throughout centuries. From the time of Adam, God has sent His messengers, His message. Read in the Quran, God says every time a messenger came, people rejected him. Many of them have been rejected, many of them have been killed, So that's the state of us, human beings. And it's God's mercy that we are here. God is doing us a favor, and we're not being appreciative. So on that day, really, we don't have any excuse. May God guide us, protect us, inshallah. The idols disown their idolizers. And when those who committed idol worship see their idols, they will say, "Our Lord, these are the idols we had set up beside you." The idols will then confront them and say, "You are liars." They will totally submit to God on that day, and the idols they had invented will disown them. Those who disbelieve and repel from the path of God, you augment their retribution by adding more retribution due to their transgression. SubhanAllah. Let me just read the rest of them. The day will come when we will raise from every community a witness from amongst them and bring you as the witness of the people of these people. We have revealed to you this book to provide explanations for everything and guidance and mercy and good news for the submitters. God advocates justice, charity, and regarding the relatives, and He forbids evil, vice, and transgression. He enlightens you that you may take heed. SubhanAllah. So these verses explain the idol worshippers when they see their idols. This to me resonates to those who worship their prophets and saints as an idol beside God. So when they see these idols on the day of judgment, they say, "God, these are the idols that we set up beside you." They would on that day, the prophets and messengers will have position of a prominent position, right? And then these people will go and say, "Lord, these are the idols that we have set up beside you." And imagine prophets like Jesus and Muhammad will say these people are liars. We have a verse in the Quran. If I remember which one it was. Gosh, it was 58:14. Is it? Let me just see. If I'm not mistaken, it's the verse where Messenger says, "These people." No, it's not 58:14, is it? No, it's 23:30. Sorry, 23:30. If I read the verse, inshallah. So 23:30 says, no, that's the wrong one. It's not 23:30. It's a verse, if I can't find it now. It's a verse where Prophet Muhammad, as well as Rashad, because the verse is um, attributed also to Rashad because of the number of the geometrical value of Rashad and Khalifa. and the verse number added together, it would have been a multiple 19. And the verse says that Prophet Muhammad and Rashad on that day will say to God, these people have is that forgotten my book, or oh, somebody help, um, have forsaken this Quran or something like that. Oh, found it. It's 25:30. There you go. The messenger will say, "My Lord, my people have deserted this Quran." You know, it's about the day of judgment when the prophets and messengers are called upon as witness. And on that day, God is telling us that the Prophet Muhammad will make this a statement, as well as Rashad, that people have deserted this Quran. So imagine people say, "Oh, these are the idols that we set up beside you, Lord," and then they will tell them, "You're liars. You deserted the Quran. God gave us the Quran. God is telling us, like, gave you this book." Um, bring as a witness amongst the people, we have revealed to you this book. You see, if you look at verse 89, God says, "We revealed to you this book to provide explanations for everything and guidance and mercy and good news for the submitters." So God has given us this book. All we have to do really is to read this book and believe in it and submit, inshallah. If we don't do that, on the day of resurrection, we will be one of the losers. And then God tells us in verse 90 that he advocates justice. He sent us his book with all the laws and all his just laws, and we are to follow them. So he advocates justice, charity. Everywhere in the Quran you read, God talks about charity, either obligatory charity, zakat, or charity general. And regarding their relatives, again, the zakat, the charity, the first people that God mentions that to give it to are relatives, needy relatives. And he forbids evil, vice, and transgression. He enlightens you that you may take heed. It's the devil that um, advocates evil, vice, and transgression. God advocates justice, charity, and regarding the relatives. SubhanAllah. You shall keep your word. I'm going to read all of these verses about the oath, and then we can talk about them. You shall fulfill your covenant with God when you make such a covenant. You shall not violate the oaths after swearing by God to carry them out, for you have made God a guarantor for you. God knows everything you do. Do not be like the knitter who unravels her strong knitting into piles of flimsy yarn. This is your example if you abuse the oaths to take advantage of one another. Whether one group is larger than the other, God thus puts you to the test. He will surely show you on the day of resurrection everything yet disputed. Had God willed, he could have made you one congregation, but he sends astray whomever chooses to go astray, and he guides whomever wishes to be guided. You will surely be asked about everything you have done. This is a very important verse, 93. I read it again. Had God willed, he could have made you one congregation, but he sends astray whomever chooses to go astray. So if we choose to go astray and not to believe in God, God will send us astray, and he guides whomever wishes to be guided. So if we wish to be guided, if we want to be guided, if we want to believe in our Lord, he will guide us. You will surely be asked about everything you have done. Violating your oath, a serious offense. Do not abuse the oaths amongst you, lest you slide back after having a strong foothold. Then you incur misery. Such is the consequence of repelling from the path of God by setting a bad example. You incur a terrible retribution. Do not sell your oats before God short. What God possesses is far better for you if you only knew. I read these verses all together because they talk about swearing by God and our oaths. Not oath, our oaths. um, so these are very important topics. When we read through the Quran, we see that God has put a great emphasis on the fact that we should keep our oaths and do not forsake God's name for materials of this world. If I start reading the verse from verse 225, God says, God doesn't hold you responsible for the mere utterance of oaths. He holds you responsible for your innermost intentions. God is forgiver clement. Because God has got the knowledge of our innermost intention, it is His mercy that He holds us responsible for our innermost intention, not by merely saying oaths. But that does not mean that we can just like walk around and just, swear by God randomly. No. We should be very careful when we are promising someone and swearing by God as a witness between us. Then if I read from verse 589, God says, God doesn't hold you responsible for the mere utterance of your oaths. He holds you responsible for your actual intentions. If you violate an oath, so this that I'm going to be reading about the atonement from violating the oath and see how serious it is. If you violate an oath, you shall atone by feeding 10 poor people from the same food you offered to your own family, or clothing them, or by freeing a slave. So this is for breaking an oath, right? If you have to free a slave. If you cannot afford this, then you shall fast 3 days. So you shall fast 3 days if you break an oath. This is the atonement for violating the oaths that you swear to keep. You shall fulfill your oaths. God thus explains His revelation to you that you may be appreciative. So that's again emphasizing how important it is to keep our oaths and not using God's name in vain. Then if I read 506, if I can find this quickly. 506 tells us about one of the situations that God has asked us to swear by Him and keep our oath, and that's about witnessing a will. God says, "O you who believe, witnessing a will when one of you is dying shall be done by 2 equitable people amongst you. If you are traveling, etc., etc., and then, oh, well, not etc. If you're traveling, then 2 others may do the witnessing." So the witnessing should take place in this way. After observing the contact prayers, let the witnesses swear by God. So you ask the witnesses to swear by God after doing the contact prayer to alleviate your doubts, to remove any doubts that they would transgress, right? We will not use this to attain personal gain, even if the testator is related to us, nor will we conceal God's testimony. Otherwise, we will be sinners. So this is one of the situations that God says you have to swear by God in order to alleviate any doubt from the person that is making the will. So and God tells us what to say when we are witnessing a will, and so this is a very important situation, and we should make sure that if we are witnessing the will, we will not break our oath. So that's 106. Then in chapter 58, if I read chapter 58, God tells us about those people that swear by Him intentionally and they break their oath. Choose your friends. Choose your friends. Right. Have you noted those who befriended people with whom God is angry? So God is angry with people. Have you noted those who befriended people with whom God is angry? They neither belong with you nor with them. They deliberately swear lies. So the disbelievers that God refrains us from befriending are those people that deliberately swear lies. God has prepared for them a severe retribution. Miserable indeed is what they used to do. They used their oaths as a means of repelling from the path of God. Consequently, they have incurred a shameful retribution. See, have you seen, like generally, have you seen people that swear by God and tell lies while knowing that they're telling lies? I mean, unfortunately, this is something very common in the Muslim world, and some nominal Muslims mm, very loosely swear by God and tell lies, and either they're like they're selling something to you, they swear by God that this is this and that, and then later on you realize that they were just lying to you. Or there's some people that advocate lies about God, and then they swear by God as of Allah, this is this and that. God says he doesn't like them. And these people, God has refrained us from befriending these people because God is angry with them. They deliberately use God's name to refrain people from the path of God. They set bad examples for the others. So just wanted to read these verses to emphasize the importance of our oath and not do it as much as possible. And if we do it, if we swear by God and we hold God as a witness amongst us, we need to make sure that we hold on to our oaths and we fulfill them the best possible way. So I'll read the footnote, inshallah, and that would be it. 1693, God knows the sincere believers amongst us who deserve to be redeemed. Accordingly, he guides them while blocking out those who choose to disbelieve. And that was in relevant, well, that was in relation to 93, where we said, like, God guides those who want to be guided and sends astray who choose to go astray. On that note, I'm going to stop reading now. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
MashaAllah, thank you, sister.
MashaAllah, thank you.
MashaAllah, thanks. So, based on the verses that we read, right, if anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free. I do have, if no one else has a comment, so I do have a comment on the verse that we just read about befriending people who deliberately, who have befriended people with whom God is angry, right? So, I mean, who are these people? Do you guys know?
No, I like beside the obvious, right? Like those who are very obvious um, about being, hypocritical or, you know, uh, saying bad things about God or, anybody obvious like that, I like is obvious, but I don't know where the line is kind of drawn.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Is that a question, Solomon, or is that like
It's like a
you
question.
want to comment?
It's like a question, actually.
Okay.
So first the question, then maybe the comments. Once I have
Okay. It's
something from others.
it's 58:14, so it's in another chapter. But if you like, we can read the rest of the chapter. Is that so? It's verse 14 of the chapter 58, the debate, where God says, choose your friends. Have you noted those who befriended people with whom God is angry? They neither belong with you nor with them. They deliberately swear lies. God has prepared for them severe retribution. Miserable indeed is what they used to do. They used their oaths as a means of repelling from path of God. Consequently, they have incurred a shameful retribution. Neither their money nor their children will help them against God. They have incurred hellfire, wherein they abide forever. Um, the day will come when God resurrects them all. They will swear to him then, just as I swear to you now, thinking that they really are right. Indeed, they are the real liars. So this is very much the hypocrites, Solomon. There is another chapter, I think is it chapter 9, when God talks about the hypocrites, and it's very much similar in line with these. The devil has possessed them and has caused them to disregard God's message. These are the party of the devil, absolutely the party of the devil, of the losers. Surely those who oppose God and his messenger will be with the lowliest. So these are the people that oppose God and his messenger. God has decreed, I and my messengers will most assuredly win. God is powerful, almighty. And then the last verse is the one that God says, run for your life. You will not find people who believe in God and the last day befriending those who oppose God and his messenger, even if they were his parents, their children, or siblings, or they try. So you say, yeah, if I go chapter 9, this is where by God. Super. I will find them. If you've got other comments, please go ahead. I'll try to find these.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, there's a couple of verses. If we do a search on, God is angry. You know, so a lot of these similar verses come up, and this is like particularly one of those verses where God talks about people whom God is angry with, and it says anyone who kills a believer on purpose. That's one of them, and then which is 493. Then there's 580. You would see many of them allying themselves with those who disbelieve because they are afraid, in other words, that they will be defeated. And then there was 48:6. It says he will requite the hypocrite men and women and idol worshipping men and women, for they have harbored evil thoughts about God. Their evil will backfire against them, for God is angry with them. So all the hypocrites and disbelievers, God is angry with, all of them. And then Surah 58, which you just read, I believe. Have you noted those who befriended people with whom God is angry? They neither belong with you nor with them. They deliberately swear lies. So actually, the verses that this was like a side verse that you added to, right? It wasn't. I thought it was. Mm, or what? Which? Sorry, now I'm confused.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
it was
Okay.
just to back up the other
Okay. 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 Okay.
verses.
Right. Right. Yeah. So and well, I guess so. Since we are already talking about it, um, I might as well finish this. There's also 60:13. It says, "O you who believe, do not befriend people with whom God is angry and who are hopelessly stuck in disbelief. They're just as hopeless as the disbelievers who are already in the graves." Yeah. Um, so I guess yeah, it comes down to all the hypocrites as well as disbelievers um, who are hopelessly stuck. You know, you have no hope for them. You know, these people are destined for hell. but you still continue to befriend them, right? So I guess these are based on the verses I just found. Okay, and then Brother Jaffer made a comment that I guess I can read. It says, there is a voice recording of Dr. Rashad. I think this is relating to your other comment about education and rich believer versus poor believer. It says, there's a voice recording of Dr. Rashad where he discusses with Eric about school systems, poor submitter versus poor submitter and rich submitter. He says that it is very important that our children get the best possible education because the more someone is educated, the richer that person will become with God's help. As submitters, we need to take education for ourselves and for our children very seriously. I wanted to add to what Sister Mona said. Yes.
Yes, mashallah.
So,
And I think in wasn't the same audio or the other one when he talks about the devil inside us, our companions. They keep telling you not to study or not to get up and do the hard work. But then he said that they're stupid. They don't understand. If I go hungry, they will go hungry as well. So yes, that's correct. Mashallah.
mhm. Yeah, and especially there is a trend in among people in, I guess, in certain religious groups, right, where they tend to look down on education as like a worldly thing that is no good, and so like you see people become hermits or almost hermits as a result, and you see people just going and living in like uh, religious schools where they don't know anything about the outside world and just read these books, man-made books about religion, and that's all they know. And when they go out, they become professional religionists because they can't even do anything else even if they wanted to, a lot of them. So but we see with submission, God has given us the right way. And I mean, it only makes sense for people to earn their living through righteous means and working like everybody else. I mean, using religion to make money obviously is not good. It's not something to be used as a means to earn a living. It's something to be used to strive with your own money so you can please God rather than use money. I mean, use religion to make money, become a professional preacher, etc. And I mean, you see that very often, especially now with the social media. I mean, people are making tons and tons of money just by being an online preacher or a video preacher. You have people on cable TV earning millions of dollars literally. And this is, but we have to make sure that we're educating ourselves so we can strive and we can spend more money in the cause of God. We can spread God's message this way, right? And mashallah, we had a messenger of God as an example. He was a messenger from God. So if anybody was supposed to not work and just be just be a preacher, that would be a messenger. But we know a messenger doesn't ask for any money or wage, so he was spending more money from his own pocket than the money that was coming in, as he said. And we know the messengers don't ask for any money. So I mean, he was working and making a living, and none of that was coming from using religion, even though God has blessed him with so much knowledge in religion and he was able to speak and everything. So but I think for us, we sometimes tend to forget the importance of education and how important it is for us. And these are blessings for us, and we should make use of them for us and as well as for our children. Yeah, also, there is also this, I'm not talking about religious circles now, but there's also this idea, that people come across, especially here in the US sometimes, where people discourage others from going to school. Like you have some of these high tech people that say, that they were dropouts, right? Like some of them, and then they made millions. And so they're like, yeah, we were dropouts, and you don't need to go to college. And then you have other people, who idolize some of these people, and then they say the same things. Yeah. And so they say the same things, but we understand that the amount of education that someone receives in college is a lot more than the kind of education that someone may get just by doing like something like self-taught. The amount of knowledge that is given to you by having a college education in such a short amount of time is not comparable to the amount of knowledge like one would try to get themselves, like just by being constantly on the internet, for example, right? College has a way of disciplining people, and so higher education, not just education, it's very important. Inshallah, a good point.
These are not dropout from normal university. These are dropout from Harvard, most of them, like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. And
Yeah, but
just getting into
still
Harvard
dropouts
is
and
just like,
dropouts.
yeah. So like getting into Harvard, I mean, you're like way ahead of so many people. And and before they drop out, they had this multi-million and billion-dollar idea that they were building. So they just like probably drop out to get the money. But eventually, I mean, getting into Harvard is like, I mean, it's a lot of work.
Hmm. Yeah, but sometimes for some people it may come easy. You could have, for example, rich parents and have connections within Harvard, like have your parents go to Harvard or something like that, and you'd get a different kind of evaluation for admission. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Nepotism.
If your parents are Harvard alumni, for example, it might be easier for you to go. Like Trump got into a very good school, right? Because his father was a rich businessman, and but yeah, so that, anyways.
Yes, that's also sometimes the case, but it's not that like you don't have it and then you can get in just by money. You have to have it too.
Well, Trump is a good example that you don't need
So I'm
anything.
just looking which university he went to.
Somebody could write an essay for you to get in college essay.
Well, now you don't need anyone. AI does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's some people out there like that, like George George Bush Jr. I think he was like one of the dumbest presidents. Not to be rude, but he got into Yale, just because of his father. Uh,
Hmm.
but he was into all this other skull and bones at Yale. Just but yeah, that's an example that comes.
There's an
Trump went to
old
Wharton.
saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on, shame on you." If fool me, we can't get fooled again. There's an old saying.
Yeah, and then you got
That
these
famous.
Islam friends. that tell you to don't go to school, but buy my course or something. They're selling this course on how to get rich. Like, don't go to college, be like me, get out the matrix, unplug, and
Hmm.
Mm.
I watched a good documentary on maybe I'll share the link into our group, but it's really good on just exposing these self help. Um, it's basically kind of like a religion in of itself. Just teaching the materialism and like these self-proclaimed gurus and stuff. It's just a big ring of scammers, basically. Yeah, I had a question. So like befriending people that God's angry. So you would, I mean, it's safe to say like idol worshippers are in that category, right? But like as at one point, I mean, I guess we were all, we could have been worshiping our egos or our materials and stuff. So at the same time, so would you say that like idol worshippers who insist on their idolatry, those are pretty much people like you don't want to befriend, despite you giving a message?
Uh, so one of the verses I read where God says, "Do not befriend people who are hopelessly stuck in disbelief. People with whom God is angry, people who are hopelessly stuck with in disbelief, like those who are already in the graves." So these are people that you have no hope for. Basically, um, you come to a
Okay.
point where you have concluded, for one reason or another, that this person has no hope. That you know for sure that he's destined for hell. In other words, right?
Okay. I guess it's hard sometimes because it's like you see somebody talking about like Muhammad or Jesus, and it just repulses you, and kind of doesn't. And but there's so many people like that, so it's like
Yeah.
like
Yeah, but
quit
I mean, you
talking
don't
to
have to. The thing is
you
that,
know.
you don't have to befriend everyone, right? It's not that you have to be friends with everyone that God says you can be friends with. Like, if there's 100 people and they're all good people, quote unquote, right? You don't have to be friends with all 100 people. You can't possibly be. I mean, you can be face on social media, yes, but in real life, I mean, you can't befriend that many people. So it's a choice. Like, you don't have to. But the thing is, if someone deliberately chooses to befriend someone, they need to make sure that they're not in that category, right?
Right. I guess I'm kind of curious too. Like, what do y'all think befriending is? So, like, if somebody you don't really talk to, they send you like, I don't know, a video or a funny video or something, and you laugh, and then a few days go by, they might send you another little funny video, and that's kind of the basis of communication, because you don't live near them anymore, and like, is that I mean, you're not even really talking to them. I mean, maybe you might exchange a few words. You're being nice and cordial. But is that considered befriending, or is it like, what do y'all think about that?
You mean somebody that you have concluded that is going to hell. You know them enough that you know they're going to hell, and then you have disowned them. And then I mean, if it's out of necessity, that would be one thing, right? But you don't go out of your way to, uh,
Right, right.
yeah.
No, like I understand what disown means. Like completely zero tolerance, like no communication.
Yeah, I mean, somebody could be at your work that you know is destined for hell, for example, right? But you may be forced to interact with him for some reason.
Right, but outside of that, don't
Yeah,
really
outside of
network
that, you
like.
wouldn't like tell him like, hey, let's go out and grab a burger or something.
Yeah, okay, good point. Yeah, and I know this is brought up before, but it's just for myself, it's good reminders to refresh on this topic, because
Hmm.
it's like I want to be very careful and this stuff because as we just read in the Quran, it's the stuff is taken pretty seriously, and it's also for our
Hmm.
own good. Back,
Hmm.
you know, people to even rub off on you even in the slightest.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I think I guess it's good that we're talking about it, even though it's not really the verses we read. But I think based on like what Brother Justin said, like for example, you don't know where to draw the line. So your question, I think, kind of sheds more light on it, right? When do you draw the line? Is you draw the line when you come to a conclusion that you don't see any hope for someone, and you know that they're destined for hell, right? So let's say, for example, you can have your parents, but they're still nice to you, they're kind to you, they're open-minded to some degree, and you hope that maybe someday they might change their mind. But there comes a point, let's say, that they have taken a very firm stand, and they tell you like, hey, there's no way you're going to convince me of your religion. If this is your religion, you keep it to yourself, and we're going to follow this religion. We don't want to hear about this anymore, or something like to this nature, right? And then, from based on what you know about them, just not based on what they said with their mouth, but based on your own judgment of knowing this person and their situation and their mindset and their personality, that they mean it or not, or whatever it is. Let's just, this person's 100% stubborn and has a really huge ego, and when they said this, they mean it. That's one thing. But it could be a child, let's say, and it's just a child. He may not mean what he said, or he doesn't. So it depends. Like, you have to make your own judgment about the person, but the bottom line is, you would be the best judge on the situation yourself. If you feel someone is destined for help, that you don't see any hope, and we have to be honest too, because sometimes we may feel like, yes, there's no hope, but we say, no, but God can guide anyone. Yes, God can guide anyone, but then God shows you signs that this person is most likely never going to accept, not based on God can do anything, but based on what you see in front of you. Like, if you see in front of you the signs that this person is not going to be guided, you know, then you shouldn't befriend them, right? Because otherwise, one can say, no, but God can guide anybody. And you can find a verse in the Quran that says God can redeem hypocrites, for example, and you just be indifferent with everybody. But that's
Yeah,
not what God is saying, right? If you understand that, you're not seeing any hope, that light of hope for this person to see, or to want to be sincere enough to search for God alone, is kind of getting more and more diminished. And eventually you come to realize that, what, this person's definitely astray. There's no hope for this person. Then if you befriend that person, then you're just hurting yourself, and really bad. And God says, if you see people who do that, then that those people are not sincere either. It says, they neither belong with you nor with them. They deliberately swear lies. So there is um, someone who is hopelessly stuck in disbelief, and then there's a second person, a third person, who's befriending that person. So God is talking about that person who's befriending them. God says that that I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, right? So God is telling you that middle person who's befriending you, is not sincere either. And when it says they deliberately swear lies, I see that as they're lying about their allegiance with you, or with God at that point. Because imagine, why would you befriend someone that God is angry with? In other words, right? Someone who's an enemy of God means a disbeliever, who is destined for hell. So why would you want to befriend that person, right? Why would you go against your creator out of your way to befriend someone who's an enemy of your friend? Like, if I have a friend who's really my friend, he's not going to go and befriend my enemy, right? Someone that I'm angry with, he's not going to go and befriend them. So it's like common sense. You give your clear proof against yourself at that point.
yeah, these are good examples that are set up for us in life. Just like not, looking within ourselves as humans and the way we interact and things we don't do ourselves. As one of the verses Sister Mona went over earlier about, the subordinates, like giving all your property to a subordinate who wasn't, deserving of that. It's almost like the way I think about another perspective, the way I think about it, which I guess helps me to resonate with it more. Like, if you do a good job at work or something, like, why would you give, or why would you say, or share the praise, for someone who does a terrible job at the same job that you work at? Like, why would you It just wouldn't make any sense, like because that person is didn't earn it or didn't deserve it. So I mean, it's I guess if that's one kind of offshoot way of looking at it, uh, the fallacy of idol worship.
Sorry, John, could you repeat that last part? I didn't get it.
No, I was just saying that was like an offshoot kind of.
Yes, and yeah, mashallah, we're trying to stay away from any sort of idolatry or any blasphemy. But when we look around us, like how many people are there that join our Quran sessions, right? How many people are out there that when you talk about God to them, they sit down and listen to you? You know, it's just the nature of human being, unfortunately. And today's world, there's a lot of distractions that actually distracts people from believing or from spending enough time thinking and pondering upon God's verses and God's commandments. So inshallah, I mean, like computer, God says, like computer will confirm that people are doubtful about God's
Uncertain about the revelations of God.
sorry, say it again, Brother Solomon.
Uncertain,
Yeah,
uncertain
yes,
about.
uncertain about it. Yes, exactly. So they don't accept it as they should be accepting it. So it's the nature of us, unfortunately. And God brings us these examples for us to think about them, really. inshallah.
So I have a question about verse 92. Or further down in the verse, it says, "This is the this is your example if you have used the oaths to take advantage of one another." Um, what is y'all take on that? I know violating the oath is a serious offense, but like in what uh, situations or contexts is this referring to? Like if you make an oath with somebody, or and then another question I had, like, can you make oaths within yourself? Let's say, um, what do y'all think about that?
Right, right. Yeah, so when you swear by God that you're gonna do something, let's say, right? So you, in other words, you made God a guarantor that that you are gonna carry out something. So so if you break that oath, then obviously that will repel people from the path of God, because they'll say, well, I mean, all these, like, I mean, that's my understanding of it. Like, all these people who claim to believe in God, they're all hypocrites, and person may be repelled from submission. For example, he may find a person who calls himself a submitter doing these types of things, and let's say this person's coming to the message, and then they see you do that, and then they will be repulsed. You know.
That makes sense. Like, can you I mean, could this be applied like a violation of your oath if you take an oath within yourself, like within your mind, let's say 3 years ago or 2 years ago? Just something, it could be for something small, but like, let's say you're going through, you need to purify yourself from something, and then, you end up, or let's just say it's something that you need to do, like within 2 years, for example, and then 2 years passes, you end up not completing the task. And the task is, I guess, related to the growth, the growth of your soul. It's just something like that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's like your promise is. It's like, I don't know, but others can correct me if I'm wrong, but to me that sounds more like a resolution you had, like a New Year resolution. Right?
yeah, I mean, it kind
This
of was.
time I lose 20 pounds, and then at the
Didn't,
end you don't lose 20 pounds, you gain
yeah,
20,
right.
right?
I didn't want to
Not
do
this.
it, but
It's
I
not this.
made it like,
Yeah.
okay. Like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I also like prayed about it to God and said I would do it just for the
Mhm.
accountability aspect, But I don't know if I guess that could still
Yeah,
just I'm
I think it's
doing it within
different
myself.
because the thing is that there's a victim here, right? Let's say when you make an oath with someone, and you set an expectation for someone else, then that other person is victimized when you break your oath, because they're dependent on you making that oath, right? Let's say
I see.
you know let's say you promise someone that you're going to give them something at the end of the year, and they're counting on you, and then the end of the year you don't do it, so the other person's victimized, right? But you making yourself an oath with yourself is not really the same thing.
Yes, I agree. But in general, as a submitter, it's if you're promising anyone anything, it's better to keep our promise. Um, just not to set a bad example, I think. Inshallah. I mean, it's not easy, but like, let's not. I mean, I'll try not to promise even to my kids. Or when I promise, I said like, oh, I'm not gonna promise. But like generally, it's good not to promise. But an oath is different. That's when you take God as your witness. So that's like swearing by God. You swear by God that you will do something, and that's when, that strong bond is created. That knitting thing. So that a strong bond is created between you and God, as your witness to do it. And there are certain things that you should do if you break that oath for atonement, like you have to feed the poor or you fast and things like that. So that's a very serious promise. or swearing that you do. But like generally promise on a daily basis. I mean, it's not the same, but as a submitter, I mean, it's good to set a good example. So not to promise things that we know we cannot deliver.
MashaAllah.
The funny thing about this that I've noticed just in like talking to many people, it's the people who are understand the severity of swearing to God. Those communities swear the most to God. Like Sister Mona was saying beforehand, people would say it even actively knowing they're lying. Like it's so relevant in today's generations. The youthful generation of Somalis refer to their youth as say wallahids because they say it so often. So it's like a swear word. It's like a common phrase. You don't really see it too much here in the Western world, though. Yeah, I think I covenants done passively is a problem, and like Sister Mona said, we are also advocated by God to be keepers of our word, right? To do what we say we're going to do, and though it is difficult, it's obviously something you strive for. I would be lying to you if I said everything I said I was going to do I did. That's for sure.
And then I had another kind of question, and I think I kind of understand what this is, but there's two verses about the witnesses against their communities. Verse 84, it says, "The day will come when we raise from every community a witness. Then those who disbelieve will not be permitted to speak, nor will they be excused." And then again in verse 89, it says the same thing, along with some extra information. But so I mean, in a way, could we call ourselves like, I mean, even maybe to like a town we grew up in or something, whether or I mean, are we are we part of I mean, what does it mean by communities? Does it kind of mean like groups of I guess people, or like communities as a whole, like as far as like a nation or something like that?
Sorry. So your question is, what does it mean to have a community?
Yeah, like in the context of what the verse was saying, like who are the witnesses, who are the communities,
Mm-hmm.
like obviously we're gonna have the messengers, Jesus is gonna disown idol worshippers
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like if you're
Yeah.
giving the person, your family
Yeah.
a message, something,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
they
I mean,
they
it
end up
doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be like based on your geography in terms of like the map, right? So let's say there's one for the US, and then there's one for Canada, and there's one for Mexico. But it can be based on different factors, right? Let's say there could be a family of people, you know, or there could be a race, there could be a group of people from different races living in the same place.
like a tribe or
Dif-
something.
yeah, different groups of whatever kind, right? So we know that these are groups. I mean, it could be based on where you work, so these are all communities we know. Like, bottom line is, like, people know other people, and they were around each other, right? And they witnessed the same circumstances around each other, and so there will be a witness among those
Exactly.
people that they also receive the message, and then the messenger will be a witness to all those people.
Uh,
Yeah.
that makes
Maybe it could be like let's say you could even like in today's context, like you could be talking to people in another part of the world, right? And there could be a group of people who got this message from you and they didn't accept. Um, and so you could be a witness for them. You don't necessarily have to be in the same location to be a witness
Right.
for them to be considered, right? Yeah.
Or if they make fun of you or something, or mock you,
Yeah.
or tell you,
Call you an idiot.
yeah, or tell you it's ghost stories. Yeah, I've been getting other all kind of other stuff, but whatever. That's when I saw that verse. I was just kind of wondering about kind of like that.
Mhm.
Thanks, brother. Masha.
No problem.
I was just looking through the verses, mashallah, and I came across this verse as we were talking about witnessing. It's 41:19. God says, "The day will come when the enemies." So it's 18. God says, "We always save those who believe and lead a righteous life." Right, and then 19. God says, "The day will come when the enemies of God will be summoned to the hellfire forcibly. Once they get there, their own hearing, eyes, and schemes will bear witness to everything they had done." Um, and then they will say to their schemes, "Why did you bear witness against us?" They will reply, "God made us speak up. He is the one who causes everything to speak. He is the one who created you first time. And now you have been returned to him." So the disbelievers, when they get when they reach the hellfire, their schemes and eyes they start bearing witness against them. Subhanallah.
Yeah, subhanallah. You know, and I was just so for some of these people, it would just be better if they. I mean, really, if you end up in hell, that's the worst destiny. But there, it's like I see, like I guess the really aggressors. You know, it'd be better if they didn't say these things or just kept their mouth shut, maybe disbelieved or whatever. You know, because their punishment is gonna, you know, could be tenfold. You know, their mocking and ridicule will come back to haunt them even more. You know, and it's gonna just add more remorse for the things that they said. You know, so they just I guess they don't understand. But I mean, God knows. You know, so God's even controlling them. You know, so it doesn't. It's you know, good reminders. Thanks for sharing that verse, sister.
To back on to what you just said, brother John, I've noticed that those who really focus on this worldly life, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, they always say, oh, there's nothing after life, and these are people who justify various acts. And I've always wondered, is that wishful thinking? Because in comparison to hell, right? Dying like after this life would be significantly better, right? Like even in the Quran it says, oh, I wish there was no resurrection, right? The people of hell say something to that phrase, right? So I wonder
Yeah,
if
like finish this off, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering, like is this like a wishful thinking kind of thing where yeah, and I'm sure everybody here has heard, you only live once, YOLO or whatever, right? Is this
Yeah,
why the disbelievers and why these hypocrites and all these people why they advocate uh one life because it's wishful thinking, like that is that is what justifies their actions and not to be cognizant of their actions here on this earth, right?
yeah, that's a good point. I've personally like I've only been able to dissect that uh like with people that I know very close because of how well I know them and how well you know they think or how you know how I understand how they think because I've lived around it for so long. But I think yeah, with certain people, it's that's part of the case, because and it's kind of disheartening, but it's also the wishful thinking is just I try telling them, like it's just not worth it, but like, and then I come to understand like these people must be really blocked out by God, because and then if I start to feel sorry for them, like if they're someone I grew up with, but then I realize it's like, okay, God knows this person far better than I do. He knew them before. He knows their soul, their heart. He knew them during the Great Feud, and so who am I to feel bad or something for this person? I mean, God, if God's like the most, he's the most wise, so that helps me.
Well, like God says, it's He only guides those who will to be guided, right? And those who do not will to be guided aren't, right? So ultimately, there is agency there, right? Regardless of our background. So yeah, from one aspect, you want to empathize, but at the alternative end, you have to realize too that, like, just for you or for me or for anybody here, we all chose to strive to be better, to follow God's examples that He had given us, and like it's work, right? Like I fall short every day, and like I'm constantly worried. I would imagine it's the same for you guys. Like I'm constantly on edge. I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything bad, and yet I still do bad things, right? And then I ask for forgiveness and all that in the background. That's a significantly different life than those who are just like, let it be. You know what I mean? You only live once. So, you know, that wishful thinking really brings them to their own condemnation, right? And I think there are even people who know that God exists and everything, but they dismiss it because it's too difficult. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I actually completely agree. I understand what you're saying. Like it scares them more, and I dealt with this like with a specific relative. It scares them more to look within themselves or look at the criminal element within humans or themselves, and then come to terms with, man, there's something called the hereafter, and there's a place called hell. Like that's one destination, and it's too much for them to handle. It's too, so they end up just it's easier for them to sit here and lie to themselves like, oh, nothing's gonna happen, no, no, like, or somebody's gonna come save me, Jesus or whatever. And then they see so many other people following it, and then it gets, it ties back to the same mistake of the peer pressure, the social pressure, and because they see everyone else around them, oh, look how good they're doing, they believe this, it's like so convincing. You hear all this feel good music in these churches or wherever. It could be a mosque or something, and you see so many people like, well, no, all these people can't be wrong, and it's just, but deep in the back of the mind, when you explain to them, like, no, there's accountability. Like, I mean, even in examples like in this life, if I go do something bad, someone's gonna come arrest me and I'm gonna get a sentence. So I said, it's the same exact thing for the hereafter. I said, how come you can't understand that? I mean, look at this life as an example. I said, if I do something bad, I said, I'm not going to have some random guy from my work volunteer to sacrifice himself and take the punishment. Like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't happen in this world. Like, no, I have to pay for it. So, you have to pay it forward. So I said, why do you think the next life would be any different? And they're just, they don't. But yeah, brother Masood said he had a good point. They just want to believe anything other than the truth. And that's exactly much.
Your brother John, the one that you just said about they say Jesus is Son of God, astaghfirullah, and then he was sacrificed on cross for the sin of all of us. They would never do that to their own kid. Would they let anyone harm their kid? Like they just don't let anyone say bad words to their kid, and now they're attributing this to God that he sacrificed his son for the sin of all this sinner. You know, it's again, this is another meaningless, mean thing that we humans attribute to God. Mm.
the most disgusting thing about it, Sister Mona, is
Oh, you said the
they.
most disgusting thing about his sister Mona.
Oh no 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 no
That's
no
what I heard.
no
Solomon.
no 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 no. Faith, God
That's why
forgive
you
me
need
for
to
my
take a
peppermint.
pause.
Yeah,
No,
I'm sorry. There's a comma there,
I know what
sister. I
you're saying.
promise. I promise.
I
No.
know. I didn't take it that way, Solomon.
Oh my God, he's quick, man. Brother Suleiman, you're quick, man. Uh, but the most disgusting thing about it is the fact that they attribute um not only God being three in one, which doesn't make sense, but the worst part about it is, oh, so that way we can do whatever we want. And all we have to be is like, oh yeah, Jesus died on the cross. I believe in that. Now I'm saved. That's that's so ridiculous. It takes away agency. Now I can do whatever I want because the guy suffered. That is the most disgusting thing ever. So now you no longer need to be accounted for. Your sins are forgiven. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
what's the
Uh,
purpose of life then?
right. Touch on that, I talked to somebody, somebody within my family, and she believes like all sins are the same. So I said, wait, I said so, and she's just literally repeating like the parrot example in the Quran that was given. She's just parroting what her pastors and stuff told her. But yeah, they so I said, so murder is the same as stealing a bag of Skittles from like Kmart or something. She's yeah. I mean, sin is sin, and I was like, wait, how does that make sense? I mean, it should, they don't even think for themselves. Like I don't it's sometimes I get a little uh frustrated with them, but I mean
Mhm.
I don't uh it's stupid because I used the example. I was like, wait, so how come they aren't locking people up? Like if I did a crime that was only let's say, or did something, or somebody did something that constituted 3 months versus like 20 or 50 years in prison. I said, how is that equitable? And then it's insane.
Mhm. So, also, I had another like off-topic subject I wanted to discuss, but I know a lot of people are not here also, and it's getting late. So maybe we can talk about it next time. But just something to think about. I think we were talking about in the last Quran study about admissions tests, and I think we someone made a comment that um, I think Mona, I think it was you, right? So we were talking about the admission tests, and then uh, we were saying that there you might still be tested after your admission test, um, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken. And so,
I said that.
right,
Yes.
and so like I've been thinking about that, and it's like I can't like it just logically doesn't make sense
Mm.
to want to be tested after you have already passed your test. Right? I mean, like if you've already like admission test is by definition a test to prove that you worship God under all circumstances, right? So you're already proven as a worshiper. So then after that, what would why I mean why would someone be tested if they're already passed? If there's already proven that you're a worshiper of God alone, it's not a test, right? Then that person is just going to repeat doing the things that he's supposed to do as a submitter, just to get more credits, right? It's at that point it's a test is like a litmus test. You test to see if something is acidic or basic, right? Like a chemical test, right? And but in this case, it's already proven. So I cannot see. I mean, you can say that it shows your qualities, and you're granted a rank based on that. Like you have options to strive, and you strive. You have options to be kind, and you're kind. You have options to be patient, and all these things, right? But it's not really a quote unquote a test, right? Because a test has a purpose to see one or the other. I mean, I just thinking out loud, so maybe something we can talk about in the next session, God willing.
Yes, inshallah. Maybe I'm not using the right word then for it as a test. It implies maybe the wrong meaning.
Yeah,
But
because the context, you're probably right. Because sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, sure. No, please go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
because I think the
thinking as well.
context in which we were having the discussion, it's very specific to people experiencing disasters, right? So we're talking about people experiencing disasters like getting crippled and getting cancer and dying of it and stuff. And then they were saying that, yeah, these things will continue to happen. Even when I say when we pass the test, even when we pass our admissions test, so what's the point? They're like, no, you know. So that's the
Mm.
idea that we were talking about, that they believe that even after they, first of all, they don't believe there's an admission test, right? And so when you tell them that, after you pass your test, that this will happen, and it doesn't make any sense to them.
Mm.
So they think that these things will continue to happen, meaning that people will continue to suffer from disasters, right? So there's no concept of perfect happiness, having no problems in your life whatsoever. You'll continue to experience uh, problems,
But then
right?
there's something else. But how do they know that they've passed the test? Whoever,
They don't
so
believe in
they'll,
they don't believe in such a thing. They just think that that is the messenger's opinion, is what it
oh,
comes down to at the
so
end of
they,
the day.
oh, okay. So they don't believe that there is an admission test. So that's a
Yeah,
different thing
because they
then.
say,
So
because there's
things
some people that
happen
will.
to people probably then because they're
Mhm.
not believers as such.
There's some people
But
that will
that's a
outright
different
come
thing.
out and say
Mm.
it loud. Some people are very careful with how they word things, but then some people
Hmm.
would outright say, it says, "Oh, where do you find admission tests in the Quran? There's no such thing as admission tests, like word by word. You mean? I mean, So they don't, because they don't find it as such. And I mean, you're not going to find a word admission test, right? But you see the examples are clearly mentioned, like Job was tested with all these things. Eventually God made it up for him. He gave him twice as much. And you have all these other examples, Joe. I mean, so um I mean, they say, some of them will tell you that, yeah, there's no such thing as admissions test in the Quran. And so they're not, some of them might not even phrase it like this, but then they're just going to say, no, just this, all of this test. And then they'll just confuse you with different examples from messenger stories and stuff, to say, you'll just continue to have like these disastrous things happen in your life, to see how you will do, quote unquote.
Disastrous things happening to see what you do. In terms of Job, I haven't recently listened to the audio. Does Messenger say that Job was doing admission test when things like that happened to him?
Mm. But that's another thing, right? I mean, most of these people have not heard an audio in their life.
Okay,
So,
okay,
yeah.
okay,
I
okay.
I have
No,
a
well, like,
question. Oh, sorry, go
mm,
ahead. My
please, no,
apologies.
please, no, please
Well,
go ahead, Justin.
I have a question in this regard because so to say there's like I agree there's an admission test. I don't dispute that whatsoever. However, like I do have a question in regards to like things throughout life. So I'll give you an example. Like I go through these periods where um like thank God, my life is beautiful and I'm very grateful. However, um I'm more focused on my own detriments, like my own problems, like the characteristic flaws that I have innately. And I focus on them really like quite a bit, and I kind of go back to where they were, like all the bad things that I did because of those characteristic flaws in the past, and I try to change them. So it is what would you say? I wouldn't say stressful, but it's like it's not complete happiness, okay? But like everything else is good. What would you call that? Like is that still um an admission test, or like what would you call that?
No, an admission test is like you being
Mm.
tested with adversity, or a lack of something or abundance of something, to see whether you're a fair weather friend or a bad weather friend, or both. And the person who proves to be a friend of God under all circumstances, a worshiper of God under all circumstances, is someone who will eventually pass their test. But you struggling with trying to do better, it's not really an admission test. That's just you working on yourself. I mean, that's just something that we all have to do. Even after we pass our tests, we still may have flaws that we need to work on. So, and we'll continue to work on them, and we'll continue to suffer from like pinches if we are failing in some of those areas, right, in our lives,
Mhm.
until we are able to perfect them, until we're able to fix them, find out what they are, and we are able to fix them, you know. So God will bring things to your attention,
Mhm.
and then bad things will continue to happen like pinches until you know what you're doing wrong and you're able to fix it. But obviously you have to keep looking and searching for what it is you might be doing, right? So that continues on after you pass your admissions test.
Okay. Well, God willing, we continue that on. Yeah, for sure. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, sure.
So many things happen for us during our lives to learn stuff. So once we learn from that situation, mashallah, I think that's what Messenger says. It's like, polishing the diamond. It's a difficult process, but at the end you will just come out as a diamond. But one at a time, God takes your shortcomings or things that are not in the right place. And then one by one, you go through some situations that you learn from them. So, for example, you go through a situation that makes you fully believe and understand that, God is in full control and you cannot do anything. Once you come to that conclusion, subhanAllah, you see like things twist and turn the way that only God can twist and turn them. But that only happens once you learn your lesson, once you have gone through that process and you've learned it. So that these are the things for you, that these are the things that happen in life for the submitters um to learn and improve, to strengthen their faith. That's what I think it is, inshallah.
Mhm.
Or I'm just interpreting it the way I want to do it.
Well, so that's a good topic, God willing. We can continue discussing that in the Saturday's study as well, God willing, because I know some of the people who were in the Saturday study are not here. So, inshallah. But I guess if everyone's okay, we can conclude the session for today.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, if there's and thank you for leading the study. Mona, God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Bless you all.
MashaAllah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.